Chris Mannix from Sports Illustrated. You also see him on Celtics postgame and pregame live. And Mannix, I guess start with just what your reaction is to everything we've learned over the last 20 minutes. And I know you were kind of in front of this saying they should have canceled the season.
Well, my point earlier in the day was that they should suspend operations until this thing changes, until this thing calms down. And, that was a sentiment that was expressed to me by a number of league officials, team officials. There was a lot of support within the league office to go on some kind of hiatus and wait to see if all this calms down. This is unprecedented for these people. They don't know what they're dealing with or what kind of ramifications there would be. But one thing that was told to me explicitly was if a player contracts this, that's the ball game. The NBA will shut down because not only do you then have to test everybody on that team, you have to test everybody that player played against for the last couple of weeks. You have to be proactive with your testing there. So when it was learned that Rudy Gobert had tested positive, and Rudy Gobert played in Boston just a couple of games ago, that didn't surprise me at all. The NBA shut the season down.
Well, Chris, is there any word or scuttlebutt about where or how he contracted it? And you mentioned Boston. I mean, that's been sort of a hot zone there, and the incubation period for the disease, from what I've read, can take 5 days. 5 days is sort of the average, and it's the 5th day since that Friday Utah game here in Boston. 5 days later, here he is, and they're shutting it down. So is there any scuttlebutt about where it came from, and could it possibly have been in Boston?
No, not really, Mike. At this point, it would just be pure speculation. I've heard that incubation could be as long as 10 to 14 days from the people that I've talked to, experts in the field in the last couple of days. So anything would be complete speculation. I would say that I'm sure you've seen the clip by now of Gobert putting his hands all over the reporters' tape decks just a couple of days ago in what has to be one of the most biblically stupid videos that you'll ever see, given what we now know about Rudy Gobert.
Yeah. Chris, I want to ask you about just this suspension period. Any information on how long we're talking? Are we talking about a month and a half? Has there been any discussion among the league hierarchy on how they want to do this thing?
Most of the discussion, Michael, it started in the last 2 or 3 days about how the league was going to handle it. A couple of days ago, I think they had a pretty good idea based on what certain cities and states were advising, that playing in empty arenas was going to be something that they would have to do. They had an owners' call earlier in the day where several owners expressed the support for the idea of shuttering the season for the foreseeable future. Most of the owners on that call were more in favor of kind of letting this thing play out with empty arenas, but there was some growing support for shuttering the doors. The people I've talked to tonight, they don't have any idea how long this is going to last, and if I had to characterize it any way, there is not a lot of optimism that this season is going to be able to be resumed. There's more of a sense that, and they're getting this from their own medical experts, that there's a real possibility that this gets worse countrywide before it gets better. And if it continues to get worse, they're not going to come back and play in front of empty arenas. Now they pulled the pin on the nuclear option. I do not believe, based on my conversation, they're going to come back and say, all right, we're going to play games in empty arenas, smaller venues, just to get the TV games on the air.
So, Chris, now that one of the NBA players has tested positive for coronavirus, do you know if all players are going to be tested now? Or are all NBA employees going to be tested? Does the NBA want to get a grasp on how widespread this is and how many players or employees this is affecting right now?
They absolutely want to do mass testing when it comes to their employees. It will clearly all start with Utah and then spread throughout the league. But, this is another one of those things that we're kind of trying to learn about in real time. But nobody I've talked to is 100% sure about, does the NBA have better, because of their resources, are they able to get people tested faster than other people can, than the country can? Because the country right now is having problems with that. On a personal level, I have relatives in Florida that have been ill and are having a hard time getting tested for all this. The NBA is not sure if they're going to run into the same problem. I would imagine because of the vast resources that they have, they'll be able to get people tested quicker. But the sense I get is that it's not going to be an overnight process. For the next 2 or 3 days, they'll have everybody tested. It's going to be an extended period.
Okay. Yeah, we're hearing that these test kits have been few and far between. That's one of the biggest problems with not having accurate numbers. And we're hearing now, Mannix, that the Thunder and the Jazz have been quarantined.
Yep.
Had you heard that, and any more you could tell us?
Yeah, they're as recently as I think 20 minutes ago when I spoke to somebody within the Thunder organization, they were quarantining players from both teams in the locker room. The NBA said that in their release, the NBA said that the player, they didn't name him, but it was Gobert. The NBA said that he wasn't there. I wasn't aware of that at the time. I thought he was, at least he was there at shoot-around at some during the day. So I think there's some concern if he was at the arena at all at any point in time that players in Oklahoma City could also be affected by this. So they're taking, as you might imagine, every possible precaution.
All right, Chris, thanks so much.